worried that you might be the cool kid? You wear the latest fashions on top of all the trends? Or have you ever worried you were too much in the mainstream? Always so generic, more normal than your friends? Well, we've devised a test to put to rest your fears. There's no need to panic if you lend us your ears. Tonight you can't sleep easy after all that you've heard. Cause if you like the show, then you're probably a nerd. Oh, Canon, it's Canon, it's all. With Tyler, Phil, and Boris. Oh, Canon, it's Canon, it's all in Canon.
It's Sunday. You know what that means? It's time for another new episode of the It's Canon podcast. As always, we're your hosts. I'm Boris. And this week I'm joined by Phil.
Hello, everybody.
And Tyler.
It's the Superb Owl, We're Totally Not Hungover episode.
Yep. On this week, we're going to be talking about remakes, reboots. We're going to be talking about streaming content. A bit of a follow-up from last week's conversation. We're going to be talking about Stadia and what's going on. We're going to be talking about Amazon in the future. We're also going to be talking about WandaVision. How does that sound, guys?
Only if we do the exact same coverage of WandaVision as last week.
That's pretty much where we're going to be.
30 seconds. It's good. We're done.
If at all. If at all.
Yeah. Rockin', let's do it.
All right, so another day, another Sunday. Here we are. So, what is new with you, Phil?
Oh man. This week was kind of slow. You know how last week I ruptured the universe with my television binging. Well, this week, you know what, I wanted to watch Cowboy Bebop. Didn't feel arsed at all. Couldn't be bothered to do it. Don't know what's going on there. I did watch a lot of Kim's Convenience, as Boris can attest to. And yeah, just the regular stuff, man. Snowpiercer, Expanse is done. Season 5, boo. So I'm patiently waiting for season 6. I'm not going to spoil anything, but if you haven't watched it, I encourage people to go watch it because there were choices made. And yeah, feelings. And yeah, you know, Resident Alien, I really enjoyed the second episode.
Have you seen the third yet? Because that also is released.
No.
Yeah, I'm 3 episodes in.
Oh, I'm jelly. Shit. I gotta go. Oh, I'll fire up the app and watch that then. But
It's dropped for me. I don't know if I've got special stuff.
I just watched it on Sci-Fi Network, or Canadian Sci-Fi Network. And I only saw the one, but I did notice my PVR was recording for some reason. And I did notice that they're looping them on Friday nights. They're doing like Resident Alien Fest back to back. So maybe it was in there and I was just not paying attention because I just happened to see it. But, you know, then I get into video games and I go, oh, guess what? I want to play stuff. And obviously with all the news about Stadia this week, I've been enjoying my Stadia life because I just feel like it's on borrowed time.
Oh no.
Who knows? Who knows what's happening there? But it might all go away and then I'm left poor because I bought these video games and they're gone now. Because when the cloud disappears, so does all
you
your
were
content.
warned.
I was warned. So if Google do unplug the internet for Stadia gaming, they're going to have an angry customer to deal with. Because I will want blood. It's one thing if you give me free games, but when you take my money...
Phil's going to be Obi-Wan from episode 3. You were the chosen one!
Yes! I believed in you! You betrayed me! I have the higher ground! You have my money! Now you will be burnt to a crisp, Anakin, Google!
Yeah. Seriously, the Resident Alien is just a good show.
Yeah, they got it right. They cast it right. They got it right.
Alan
gotta
Tudyk
say.
is so talented, and the lady playing Asta is a delight. And
Yep.
having grown up in small town, rural nowhere, they get a lot of the weirdness of like growing up in small town, weird nowhere really right.
Yep. There's quality in them there hills, people. I would say make sure to tune in and support it because we need them to know to continue on doing this. I even went out and I got the comic book just for a foundational exploration of what the source material was. And Comixology had like the graphic novel, the first volume of the graphic novel on for like $4, which is a steal. So yeah, it's an interesting exercise to do for sure. But I enjoy it. Alan Tudyk has always been one of my favorites. I'm so glad he's in the Star Wars universe. I'm so glad that he's in a lot of the stuff I really like, even though, you know, you guys are hating on some of that stuff, but that's okay. How about you, Tyler? What do you do all week?
Lots of Resident Alien. Tried to watch Locked Down, the Anne Hathaway, and I can never pronounce his name, Chiwetel Ejiofor. Super talented team of actors and stuff. And it's like a movie that is entirely set and filmed inside of like the COVID lockdowns. And we got 8 minutes into it last night. And so it's advertised as like, oh, it's a fun little rom-com heist movie. We got 8 minutes in and we were like, this is so depressing. This is way too depressing. And we noped right out.
Oh, good for you. Making that call 8 minutes in.
Oh, it is. I don't know if it gets funny. We're going to try it again at some point, but it is like, yes, let us discuss the alluring call of suicide during this time where you can't go anywhere. And it was like, Jesus.
Oh, what was the one that you mentioned before? Alice in Borderland? Did you?
I didn't mention that.
I was the one
I
who
didn't
mentioned
mention
it.
that.
Okay, because one of you freaking asshats mentioned it, and it came up on my Netflix thing. So I watched the first episode, and I wanted to go and cry. That's horror, man.
Yeah.
It's horror.
I said it was.
I know you did, but it looked so appealing. Those little thumbnails are all, oh, that looks interesting. And then you get into it, and you have to finish it. Like, there's no half outing that.
I also finally started playing Rocket League with some friends of mine. And
car soccer.
We're undefeated. I have never lost a game of Rocket League. This might be the thing I'm best at in the universe.
That's awesome. Car soccer.
And like, it wasn't like we were like eking out wins. We were getting like 10-0 shutouts up and down.
Was it AI opponents?
No. Nope. We were in ranked and everything, and like no one could touch us. It was so weird. It might just be that like there's like a skill level that we haven't gotten to. Like we have to like rank up because you start in casual unranked and you have to like get your ranking and stuff. But it's just like I'm undefeated. Come at me.
That is like a very popular game too.
Yeah.
Like that's got to be a big player pool.
And then it was a lot of like I had some extra money this week from a lot of sources. And one of the things I do when I have a lot of extra money is I go on Kickstarter. And I backed a lot of weird Kickstarters.
Nice. I think out of my whole life, I've backed a flashlight out of Kickstarter and a video game that still exists. I get emails, but I don't play it. It was almost like a Minecraft type video game.
Oh, there's a bunch of those.
Yeah. Weird.
Yeah. I've got a really good record for picking like Kickstarters to back in terms of like not getting screwed over.
Yeah, same here.
It's the threat of getting screwed over that scares the shit out of me.
Oh, 100%. I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you. There's only one thing I've ever backed that I got it and felt like this was not what was advertised. and that was sort of the Necromancer. And part of it was like it was advertised as this one kind of game, and then you started playing it, and the writing was like it was just like fart jokes. It was like a 13-year-old wrote it, and I was just like, I can't even. I couldn't even get to gameplay. The writing was so antithetical.
You gotta
to
let
my
me know what the title is. I might be into that.
Sword of the Necromancer.
Fart jokes. Sword of the Necromancer. Interesting. It's so funny too. A 13-year-old did it. It was like right up my alley.
Yeah, I'm actually looking over it. And
kind
I'm
of
like,
the thing about Kickstarter is like you never know what you're gonna get at the end of the day, right? And it's something that we've been talking about doing a special on for years and years. Kind of Kickstarters, the risks, the benefits, the evolution of the Kickstarter in general, because it started off, anyone and everyone was going up there, especially in the creative sphere. But I've seen that over the years, it's kind of evolved a little bit. It's changing a little bit. Content creators are kind of leaving Kickstarter a bit, going some other routes. I've even seen some content creators on OnlyFans, but that's neither near or there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's something that I kind of want to talk about and kind of follow on a little bit more.
Yeah, funny enough, Ian from the one episode, his dad is the guy that I love talking to you about Kickstarter the most. He is the former head of litigation at a law firm, and he has maintained that like Kickstarter is fascinating, but his view is that it's just a matter of time before someone sues them and their entire business model gets upset because of the nature of how contracts work in like North American law. Because Kickstarter maintains that this isn't a contract, even though you're giving money to get a thing, which definitionally, like, that's what a contract is it's offer. It's offer, consideration, and acceptance. So it's any exchange of a thing for a thing with a meeting of the minds that we both agree we're exchanging a thing is de facto a contract.
Star Citizen.
Yep. The thing is, right now, there's no precedence, right? And once there is precedence,
that's going to be the thing that breaks it.
I don't think it's be Star Citizen because that audience is too.
Oh yeah, true.
It'll be something like Star Citizen, but yeah, like a class action for Star Citizen.
Well, there's got to be disgruntled Star Citizen investors, and
I don't think there's enough. Though is the issue. But that audience is weird.
Yeah,
I hope it gets made. The promise is definitely there, but it's just the promise.
Yeah, having looked into Star Citizen a little bit, I think that part of the issue is that like there is no Kickstarter does not have a guarantee that what you get is good. It just has to like match what was advertised within the relatively like large amount of area we give for like difference between advertising and what you get.
Yeah.
So
makes sense.
One could argue Star Citizen is done because you can go look at your spaceships.
Well, it just reeks to me. The limited exposure that I've exposed myself to it.
Yeah.
It just seems like there's a developer there who is never happy. It will never say it's done. And just always says, well, we could do more. And therefore it never gets released.
Yep.
He doesn't iterate it. He just wants to release the perfect game, or the team does, whatever it is. And yeah, there's just this constant, it's the technicians. I used to be a technician. And the funny thing is that you never fix something to be fixed all the way, because then you're taking away your career. You want it to break eventually, type thing. So,
yeah, the counter being that like games need to be finished, or finished enough.
Well, yeah, big time. People got to play it. Like that's what I don't understand, because you can iterate it up, just like CD Projekt Red are doing with Cyberpunk. Hey, guess what? We'll fix it. It's that simple.
Yeah,
we'll keep on working.
Yep.
Yeah, for the most part, yes. But you need that MVP, the minimum viable product, to get out there. And unfortunately, I don't know what it is, whether it's the the PMs or dev or pressures, but sometimes they try to do too much.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything I've heard points to the devs on this, but that's an oversimplification, I'm sure. So I don't mean to insult any devs, any developers out there. It just sounds like it's this one particular dude from back in the day who made that successful video game franchise. I can't even remember what the original was, but it's spaceships.
Star Citizen.
Yeah, for Star Citizen, the guy made a game before that, didn't he?
Well, I thought it was also called Star Citizen.
No.
All right.
It was very popular.
Okay.
But anyhow, spaceships, like back in the day, spaceships, like
Sports shapes.
Yeah. So yeah. Anyhow, that's Star Citizen.
Yep.
Boris, what'd you get up to?
Oh man.
Like aside from recording 10,000 podcasts.
Aside from recording 10,000 podcasts, this week's been insane. Work is just honestly just killing me this week, which is a good thing. Not complaining. Just takes up a lot of time. What else have I been up to? I've been watching. This week I watched that new Netflix show, Firefly Lane. Pretty good.
Oh.
Yeah, it's right up
Wait.
Boris's alley. Right up Boris's alley. What else?
For people who don't know, what is it about?
It's basically two friends and their bond over the years, like their entire lifetime and whatnot. Their ups and their downs. It's very much like This Is Us, where it jumps back and forth in time, telling a story. It's pretty good. What else have I watched? I've watched
You and your melodrama.
Yeah. I know, right?
You really dig that. Like
It's just.
I remember we were both watching Love at the same time.
Yeah.
And that was like freaky.
Yeah. That show was so funny though.
Oh yeah.
What else have I watched? I watched a show called Fate. It's
Called what?
Fate.
Fate.
Fate. It is basically Harry Potter with fairies.
Oh
mixed in
wait.
with some CW drama.
Oh god.
It's not that good. Yeah, pretty much.
Riverdale.
Basically, what else did I watch? I watched a Spanish movie called Below Zero. It's essentially about like a prisoner transfer gone wrong.
Yeah.
I've seen better. Sorry?
It looked interesting.
Yeah, it's not too bad, but it's just very slow burn. What else did I watch? I've been watching this actually show on Netflix called H. It's also in Spanish show. They've just been killing it. Like we talked about a week or two ago. And this show basically takes place in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and it's about heroin and heroin-like products and kind of like that. It's kind of like what was that show from a few years ago? Not The Sopranos. Something.
Breaking Bad.
Nah, not really. Doesn't matter. But it's pretty good. And then obviously been watching Snowpiercer as that comes out, because I don't sleep. So Tuesday morning I was able to watch that, and this season has been really good. I know you've been kind of following that as well, Phil.
Oh yeah. I'm on it. Like, Tuesday, that's part of my Tuesday routine.
Yeah.
Fire up Netflix and check it out. See what's happening.
Yep. And then this morning, like I basically slept like an hour. Just haven't been able to sleep, so I was screwing around on the computer all morning. About 10:30, everything just dies. My phone obviously is still working, and the guys upstairs, like it's a couple that lives up there, and they just like I don't know what they're doing, but yeah, they have the modem, and they just basically changed every setting known to man, and it's like, well, you do realize that there's a bunch of people living here, so I had to go upstairs, wait 15 minutes to even get in their place, reset the modem to the exact settings that they were at before, so that all of our devices can just automatically connect, and it was just a piss off. So that was my morning in a nutshell.
Yay.
Yeah, it's not fun, but it is what it is. The beauty of living here in downtown Toronto, sometimes you don't have full control of everything, but it is what it is. But in terms of like actual TV watching, like, yeah, I've been super busy, but I've been finding time here and there to watch quite a bit, actually.
Huh.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
I found out this week that spicy kimchi is really tasty.
When you
haven't had
sent me
kimchi
that,
before?
I've never really indulged in it directly, and a friend of mine did an order for organic spicy kimchi and regular kimchi, so I said, "Hey, I'll jump in on that. Get your minimum free shipping quota under control." And
Yeah.
it's really tasty, really good for the gut bacteria. Apparently,
Checks out.
I don't think my dad likes it, but hey.
when you sent me that message, I thought you were talking about Kim's Convenience. I'm like, I was very confused.
I mean, it also could have been Kimchi the drag queen.
There was a weird explosion that happened Friday morning. Everybody, just pray you're not downwind.
So funny.
No, it's tasty though. I like it, but it does smell weird when you take the cap off. I'm telling you.
Well, it's like a fermented.
Mm-hmm. Fermented cabbage.
Yeah. With like spices and chilies and shit.
Yep.
Yeah, it's very healthy. Very healthy.
Yeah, I love it.
You don't have to have it spicy.
No. But it's really good. I have a whole bottle here right now because I love making that with fried rice, egg on top. Pretty simple.
Sweet.
Yeah. All right, guys. Let us move on. Give us some time to talk about all of the other subjects. Unless there's anything else you guys want to bring up, but I doubt it.
Get down to business.
Right. So, reboots, renewals, and all this fun stuff. What sparked this little conversation we were talking about a little bit later on at the last half of the week? That's Mass Effect Legendary Edition. And we're finding out more news about it, the lack of updates that's being made. So I basically want to take, number one, your take on Mass Effect Legendary Edition. And kind of like, is this a cash grab? Is this nostalgia? Like, what's the point of this? I know that we've talked about this many times, but like, I think this is a perfect example of a studio just, trying to make a quick buck. And I think that in the process of doing that, they might be angering some of their diehard fans. What do you think, Tyler?
I think that it's worth remembering that Mass Effect Remastered has been, long been requested since, almost, I think, 2 years after 3 was out, people started requesting a remastered trilogy.
Yep.
So, if the audience keeps demanding it, at some point, the company is no longer well, we're going to give it to you then. And if it's just yeah, we're reaching this era where what is a remaster is becoming increasingly it isn't what it once was. Because once upon a time, it was just, we're going to put a bunch of new textures in, we're going to tweak the graphics a little bit, and it's the exact same underlying mechanics.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then with Final Fantasy VII remake, which / might be a sequel / might be the finale.
Mm-hmm.
Because it changes major story elements, and it is apparently canonical with the previous playthrough and with all of the other games and TV shows and movies in that world.
Yeah. It's they're aware of what's going on, right? And they know that something has happened before and yada yada yada.
Well, canonically, Sephiroth in this version is a time traveler, and you fight and kill the clones from Advent Children. So, who knows? Who knows? The point being that what is a remake is a very wide ambit right now. And I think that the Mass Effect audience is very quickly becoming a shitty audience.
Yeah. It's been on that road since since 3.
Since 3.
Like, honestly.
3 really showed kind of that toxic fandom, but I feel that, like, you know, the reception of Andromeda really, really showed that fandom kind of where they're at, and then kind of seeing the news of what's going on with this particular version. We're really seeing it. So
I actually think it's been since 2. I think it's been since 2, because I remember when 2 came out and people were like, "This isn't Mass Effect.
Yeah,
how dare they do this, that, and the other?" It's like, oh my god, shut the fuck up.
Well, I look at it on a little bit of a different take.
Okay.
I'm not looking at it as a Mass Effect fan or hater or whatever category everybody seems to slide into at some point. But I look at it from a studio standpoint.
Right.
This studio has really shit hard on itself. We look at Anthem and that whole debacle. That was 2 years of absolutely shameful behavior from a studio. You look at Andromeda and what that was. Now, I was saying to Tyler off air that I think there was a better game than a lot of us gave credit for in that title, because I didn't pay attention to the backlash as much, and I got further into that game than maybe a lot of people did. I didn't finish it, though. It did eventually unravel for me. But I look at all that experience and all of what's happened with BioWare, and then I think what they're trying to do is hit an easy home run right now. I just think that they want to signal to everybody, we all know that there's a new Dragon Age coming down the pipe, and they're doing something to do a stopgap in the middle to kind of bump up their studio awareness and have stuff to positively talk about, instead of the press junket being, again, about Anthem and that whole situation and lack of response.
Yeah. Yep.
They kept on promising they're going to fix it. This is 2 years, and it's like nothing's moved other than somebody on Twitter saying that they're going to fix it.
Yeah.
That's just terrible. If anybody wants to complain about CD Projekt Red or anything like that, like, holy shit, go look at what BioWare did on Anthem. Like, at least Project Red is fixing their shit and trying to make the product become better and refine it and do the responsible shit. But you look at what BioWare did, and it's shameful. And that's one of the biggest, like, it's under EA's tutelage. It's an absolute disgrace to consumers. I still have that disc on my wall.
Yeah. You know, yeah, that's the thing. I don't know. Yeah, we yeah, I don't want to open up that can of worms, the CD Projekt Red can of worms again, but
no,
you're 100% right there.
I just use it as an example, right? Because I can't identify with Bethesda doing the same thing. Because Bethesda release a game and basically it just continues to roll down shit creek. Like, it doesn't get any better. It's just broken on release, and there's not really a lot of patches.
Yeah. Or it's Doom Eternal, and it's art.
Yeah.
Like, Doom Eternal has one of the best gameplay loops in video game history.
I think I'm in it right now.
I also think that it's worth noting that I think that whether it was EA's decision or BioWare's, because it is like a sub-developer and it does have some autonomy.
Yeah.
It's not like it's like any of these studios. They have some autonomy from EA, but it's still with oversight. Yeah. And I think that after the pushback in 3 metastasized as much as it did. Because I think we don't remember, like, Mass Effect 1 released, and it was kind of a slow burn for becoming super popular. Like, it wasn't an instant hit.
Well, it was an exclusive, right? So it was like the audience was limited. But regardless, you're right.
Originally, yeah. And then like, there was a huge pushback on 2 originally, and then people came around to loving it. And there was a huge pushback on 3 originally, and then, like, you know, a decent number of people have come around to liking it for what it is and being like, it's a flawed, but ultimately it's a decent game with kind of a flawed ending.
Yeah.
to Andromeda, like I think you have a lot of people who are a lot of people have come around to being ambivalent to Andromeda versus like the initial vitriol.
Yeah.
But I think that those initial backlashes made BioWare like they were gun shy, and I think the right call after Andromeda's initial thing was no matter what game you made after Mass Effect 3 was going to get shit on. You were going to get a bunch of hate no matter what, because it wasn't going to be Shepard, and you didn't want to continue that story, because I don't know how you can do that story at that point. I think you got to put it to bed. I don't really think it's the right call from an IP management standpoint, because otherwise it becomes Commander Shepard's story versus like this interesting universe you've built. And they should have just been like, fuck it, fine. And they should have done a Ubisoft Lite, and they should have done Andromeda, maybe do the one DLC they announced, clean it up a little bit, clean up some of the problems like they did, and then just release another Mass Effect game in 2 years and have it, it's not going to be as big as 3, it's not going to be as groundbreaking, but you get people used to this idea that Mass Effect can be bigger than this weird thing they have bought into. And I think it's very analogous to Star Wars.
I was literally going to say that. This is the thing. You created this franchise that's based on a chosen one. And the big story with Shepard, let's focus on Mass Effect right now.
The original Tridge.
Yeah, he's the chosen one. Like, there's this entire story, and the world and the galaxy's fate is up to him. So to create a franchise based off of that, how do you do that? How do you create, and this is kind of something that Andromeda suffered on, right? Where, how do you create a story outside of that mainline story that people are going to give a crap about? You know that no matter what, the characters aren't the chosen one. So how do you kind of play the balancing act of, okay, this story is super interesting, but, the fate of the galaxy isn't up to this particular person. There's obviously ways that you can do it such that they tie in together or something, but, you're already kind of creating this uphill battle for yourself by putting so much onus on the mainline story.
Yeah, I also think it's worth... Yeah, I think they tried to do a lot of that with Andromeda. I think you're right. You have to have this way of having other interesting stories. And we've seen, but like this audience would be super down with like a story just being about saving one planet.
Yeah.
Like you could have done, there's this other game, and you could I think that you could have gotten players very, very excited about a game where it's about a 20-hour main storyline. It's about, some planet like Eden Prime, of it's a new colony or whatever, or even, there's a lot of stuff you could have done with it. Have it be like the pitch is, instead of being like, this human is, it's a 20-hour game. You gotta make your own Spectre at the beginning. It can be one of these races that we've already built for like multiplayer. So you already have a lot of the rigging and stuff done, and have it be a smaller, more cohesive game, and have it be about like, your focus is a lot more limited in scope, and you get to jet around a little bit, but your focus is on like, there's a war brewing over this one planet, and you're like figuring out what's going on, and have it be a little bit of a conspiracy of like, some shadow broker-esque character is trying to incite a war between the Turians and the Solarians or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think you could have done. I think they could have put out a game like that. Use the Frostbite. I think you could use the Frostbite engine again. Use it basically the multiplayer engine from Andromeda. Put a decent writing team on it. Slap it out. And again, I think that we're seeing of this. There's room for single A games versus AAA games. Put it out at $60 instead of $80.
Mm-hmm.
And I think your audience would have been decently pleased, and basically be like, look, we have the main story still going, but here's a fun little side thing.
Yeah, look at what Sony did with Miles Morales, right? I think that was brilliant.
Exactly. Yeah. It's exactly what I'm getting at.
Be more humble. Satisfy the thirst. Build a bigger universe.
Well, I mean, the issue with Mass Effect is it's such a big universe with so many awesome things that, like, I think there's a ton of room that you could just be like, all right, we're just gonna this game is just about, you have to play Biotic this game, but you get to choose which race.
Yeah.
And this is all about, you're training a Biotic squad for whatever.
I think there was still some lingering hate and, resentment towards Mass Effect 3, which kind of rubbed
100%.
off on Andromeda. Like, there was...
Well, it was both resentment and hate, and still at high expectations.
Yes.
I think a lot of people wanted Andromeda to fix 3, and I think that that was never going to happen. And if you want to go back to that IP, you just have to keep putting out games to denude that vitriol and just have people be more okay with it.
Yeah.
Well, let's not forget that there was an awful lot of gameplay breakage for people. I didn't experience it as much, but that game got memed to hell for some of the floating characters and some of the graphical issues that were happening with it.
Sure.
That didn't help it. You know what I mean? Because the minute it becomes something that people are pointing to and laughing at on the internet is when you take on this boatload of extra hate. Like, you have your hardcore players that, you're right, are angry about 3 and are going into this, but then you get that happening and people who aren't even buying the game are circulating bad press about it. You know what I mean? It's just a weird toxic stew that that game got dragged into.
I think
because of the nature of the internet.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, and I've had this article idea I've been shopping around for a while of the unmemeable game, and I think the unmemeable game is also the unmemorable game.
Yep. That's part of it.
And that, I think the problem a lot of these big companies have is less so these bugs and graphical errors, but in how they handle it.
Yeah.
Like, could you imagine how much, and I think that's part of what CDPR is doing right now, that their online team is given some leeway, is owning that, we've made some mistakes.
Yeah.
Like, could you imagine BioWare coming out and being like, because the one meme that kept going was, my face is tired. And they were like, and they, instead of doing that, they owned it, and they were like, yeah, haven't you ever fucked up your makeup in the morning? She's very tired. I think that would have gone a real long way to diffusing that, but instead they're like, no, it's great. It just doesn't work. Yeah. And I mean,
you have to look at what happened in Anthem though too. They did lean into it and say, "Yeah, we fucked up," but it took an awful long time.
Well, it took an awful long time, and 2, I don't think you compare Anthem to Mass Effect Andromeda. I think it's a comparison.
Oh, it's
of
its
too
own
much
thing.
Of
but I point at the studio and maybe some of the overarching leadership that covers both projects and their decisions, right? I'm like, maybe
the other side of it to me is that Anthem was pitched as this is going to be a new big huge IP, and I don't know, anytime, and I work in creative fields, and it happens all the time, if people are like, this is going to be the next big IP, and it's always like, well, how do you know that? Why?
Mm-hmm.
And Anthem's a great example of this is going to be bigger than Mass Effect. And it wasn't. Or, I mean, Destiny was originally pitched as the Halo killer.
Yep. It was.
And it was why not both?
Yep.
And I think that we see all the time in creative industries, people want to make they want to make the next big IP, but you just got to put the game out there and see if it gets that audience buy-in.
Yep.
Because sometimes it doesn't, and you can have there's tons of great games out there that the audience that are phenomenal games, and the audience never found them.
Yeah.
Well, the funny thing is let's just take a look at the 2 that you mentioned, Halo, Destiny, and Anthem in how they were positioned, and it's just hilarious to me because, they never got, they both suffered from huge writing issues. That's one of the things that Halo had benefited from. The reason why we all played Halo isn't because it was the first shooter or whatever on a console. It was because the story was interesting too, right? There was other elements that were bringing us into that title. Destiny didn't have a proper story. It was disjointed on release, right? And the audience caught them on it.
Yeah.
It was terrible because I wanted to know more about Destiny, the universe, because I was buying that hype. And Destiny 2 to this day, like I'm just seeing reports now that they're actually starting to fix some of the writing errors that they've basically have been existing. Like I would joke with my friends, we're playing Destiny, and I'm like, we don't know what the story is. Like we literally don't know. And we're having to read these cards and go on to Reddit and do all this extra work just to try and figure out what the story is. That's freaking stupid. Like, get your basic shit in order. Write a good universe. Then make your game on that. You know what I mean? And don't fire the writers 2 months before release or whatever it is that the debacle was in Destiny of Bungie. Right? Those are all fundamental. And as gamers, I think that a lot of people sell us short. Like we're just gonna go, oh look, it's Iron Man in space. I get to be Iron Man. This is Anthem. I'm Iron Man. I can fly. I got the suit. And they think that that's going to placate everybody. Like, oh, kids will love it. People will eat this up. Well, no, if the gameplay mechanics are shit, if the story's non-existent, if all this stuff doesn't flesh out, I'm not an idiot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Destiny,
you got my money, but damn.
Destiny to me always felt like one of those free-to-play, pay-to-win type games. Where kind of like a Warframe, you know? Basic story, do a bunch of missions, but to actually advance, you have to put in your money. So the fact that Destiny was like whatever, you know, your AAA title price to begin with, you know, that's what took me out. Like I'm like constantly doing these missions. I played for like a weekend, and I'm like, well, this game sucks, and I moved on. Right? Like to your points earlier, there was no story. Everything felt disjointed. Everything felt like kind of not even rushed, just kind of just right there, right in front of you. So it never felt like an actual game, an actual completed game. It was just a bunch of random stuff that you chose to do or chose not to do, and wherever it takes you, that's where we're at.
I also want to.
I sank hundreds of hours into both of those titles.
Yeah,
I'm ashamed to say.
I also want to swing back around to Mass Effect 1 for a second. And I want to remind people, like, that could have worked as a standalone game.
Mm-hmm.
That did not actually need a sequel originally. I'm thrilled we got a sequel, but it was very much like, it was built that this can stand on its own, and building things that, like Anthem, where it can't stand on its own, and it is designed to be getting major patches regularly, which means that you need a big enough player base paying money enough to continue to pay for that. And if that doesn't materialize, you're dead in arrival, and you're going to piss the player base that you did get off. So I think
isn't that one of the things that's really fucked up the game industry right now is there's no single player games, supposedly?
I mean, that's a regular meme. I don't think it's real.
I don't think it's necessarily true real. Because there are lots of single player games out there. We all play them.
There's insane numbers of single player games out there.
Yeah. But it's just that everybody wants to be online and whatnot, and that's a good point too, is that there's a cost associated to that, and that means there are going to be hooks to get your money in game. There's going to be pay to win strategies or pay to accessorize or whatever it is. Yeah. Keep those servers running.
Here's the thing, right? Like single player games, like we've seen it in this whole thing about Cyberpunk 2077 and the drop off of active gamers. Yes, there's been a large drop off. You know why? Because they finished the game.
They finished the game.
So, it's multiplayer games give you that life cycle, that lifespan that single players can't. So people tend to talk about those games a lot more, always forgetting the sheer number of single player games that there are, which there's so much. I can name like 10 off the top of my head right now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so it's just an interesting thing going back to Mass Effect and the Legendary Edition, and it's that hit of nostalgia. I think fans are starting to, I don't want to say backlash on the entire idea, but their expectations are becoming a little more difficult, right? It's like you can't just slap a coat of paint on it and call it a day. I think fans
but
in
less
general.
butts.
Sorry?
Less butts.
Yes.
They're cutting down on the butt shots.
Yes.
Which were gratuitous. There was a lot more of that than they should have had. But you're right. But I'm getting to the point where I'm bitter, and I probably will buy it because I'll want to see what's going on. But I'm getting to the point where I'm bitter because I already have it on my original 360 shelf, and I rebought it because, hey, look, they re-released it for Sony. So I bought that complete edition in the metal box and all that stuff. Like, it's already a game that's proliferated many times on my shelf, and here we go again.
Yeah.
Right. But you don't have to buy it.
Nope. But I probably will, right? I know myself, and I know I'm going to hate myself for it.
Yeah.
But I'm probably going to make that choice. If they release it for what, like $70 for all 3 games or something like that, or $60 or whatever the price point is, probably going to cave on that because I'll be like, well, I'm hearing that they're reworking all the gameplay dynamics in the first one so that it's more similar to 2 and 3 and whatnot. And
Yep.
it's not just a coat of paint, supposedly, but it is when they want it to be.
Yeah. All right, so that's reboots, remakes, and pretty much video games in general. So we're going to move on. So last week we were talking about WWE's deal with Peacock. And one of the things I wanted to bring up this week is kind of the price of content. With so many streaming services, obviously, they need content. So one of the things that came up this week was New Japan Pro Wrestling, arguably the second biggest wrestling promotion in all of the world. Sorry, AEW fans, it's NJPW. They, this week, announced that they signed a partnership to have a weekly TV show in certain countries, Canada, UK, the US, etc., on Roku TV, whatever that is. So it's a multi-year deal, and this got me thinking about kind of like the broader world of content and streaming and the price of content and how everyone is going for those exclusive rights for content. Because of so many streaming services. But one of the things that we're going to be noticing, and it's something that we've talked about Netflix, and that's the quality of some of this content. These services have to fill their libraries with something. So, oftentimes it's not going to be the best of shows, the best of content that not only is not just for you, but things that shouldn't even be made in general. So, do you see this hurting streaming services in the long run? Phil, what do you think?
I do think that there's way too many streaming services, too many exclusives, and we're getting to the bloated segment of the market, and it's going to have to correct itself, and it will. Consumers will make that choice. Either people are going to go to the internet and find the good stuff and steal it and watch it, or you're going to get what's happening now where we all have our Netflix and whatnot, but we ignore other services. The fact is that there's not enough for all of us to buy. And heck, even being in Canada, I'd love to have Hulu and have its content, but I can't. That type of thing. So it's kind of, I don't know. It's just a weird segmentation in the market.
Yeah.
And I'm not pleased with it as a customer. But it's going to have to correct itself. Either shit's going to fail, and then stuff will refine itself on other services that are succeeding.
Yeah.
That's the way I think that it's ultimately going to filter out.
Yep. What do you think, Tyler?
I'm going to take a bit of a contrarian opinion, and I think that it's worth remembering that for anything, 80% of the crap being made is garbage.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Think about back in the day, how many made-for-TV movies there were.
Yep.
I think a bigger issue of what we're facing right now is the tendency for Netflix and a lot of these streaming services are making it easier for it to just be cliquey groups that keep getting work rather than newcomers having any sort of chance to break in. And I think like the great example of it is we watched 2 movies this week that I didn't mention because they were garbage. And it was Slaughterhouse Rules with a Z, which has Simon Pegg and Nick Frost in it.
Oh, wow.
And it's a garbage movie. And we looked into it, and the writer has never had a movie. The writer/director has never had a movie make money. He's never had a movie break even, and he keeps getting movie deals because he's friends with Simon Pegg.
Wow.
And then we watched Inheritance. And it's the same thing. If it's like this person has only ever made bad movies.
Yeah.
And they just get to keep making bad movies that don't make money. And then we have like calling a spade. We have a bunch of like super weird, out there, interesting creators who are stuck on YouTube and the film the called the festival circuit.
Yep.
Right, like the indie stuff.
Who Netflix half the time, like even Netflix won't give the time of day, even though they like are allegedly the place you can break in through.
Yeah.
And it really seems like rather than making things like you have a chance, they're making it worse because instead of being run by people who are at least like to think of themselves as creative, like the old Hollywood studio system was, which I'm not defending it because it had a bunch of problems as well, but there were people involved who like pretended there was like a creative spark behind what they were doing and they were chasing something. Netflix seems very happy to be like, we're going to do this as cheap as possible and we're just going to chase metrics.
Yep.
And that's how you get All the Boys I've Loved Before 3.
Thanks.
And Netflix's new like de facto take on the Hallmark movie.
Yeah.
With the Netflix cinematic universe. And it's just, they're garbage.
Yep.
And
I think you bring up a great point.
Incredibly white.
In, the whole TV has never been perfect. We're just seeing this now, like kind of multiplied, and it partially kind of a little more painful now because, you're paying for each of these services per month. With cable, you kind of got everything, right? So it was all included. But now you're actually putting your hard-earned cash to these channels. One thing that I've been noticing more on, and I want to get more metrics on, is the number of people who do a rotating tour of streaming services. I know that this is something that a lot of people are starting to do. I have friends who do this, who, one month they'll pay in for Netflix, or 2 months. Then they'll move to Disney Plus. Then they'll move to Amazon. Then they'll move to Crave, and kind of do this rotation throughout the year of all these streaming services. So I'd love to see kind of like what those metrics are and how the streaming services themselves count them, because they're active users per se, but they're not getting that monthly recurring revenue from them. So that's something else to consider when we're talking about this stuff, and kind of seeing how they're dealing with this. But the important thing here is, I think, something that you always bring up, Phil, and that's, the torrenting. The gray web, as I like to call it. The rise of the gray web is for sure going up. Because, I know a lot of people, not a lot, I know a few people who, that's how they watched Mandalorian. Mandalorian was the most pirated show after Game of Thrones, So, it's interesting to kind of see where this is going to go.
I see it in a cross section of my friends. I see it on the rise. I can say that out of our general chats. Hey, Dave.
Yeah.
There are people who are going to those sources to get their entertainment, and it's actually a discussion of comedy within the families, even because they know certain people aren't subscribing to services, yet they're always up to date on what's going on. They're like, yeah, I watched that episode. And it's like, how? type thing. But
here's another interesting thing. Sorry, Tyler. And this is the metrics that these streaming services actually keep. Because what's more important to a streaming service? The number of subscribers they have or the minutes viewed on their service?
I think it depends on the service. Because anyone who's watched much of Netflix's the Netflix cinematic universe, as it's cheekily called, can see that there are bananas product placements in there. So Netflix probably makes more money off of those having more viewership minutes. Right. So that's probably part of the deal. Because the product placements are disgusting in some of them. Like, there was... Oh, shoot, what show is it? There was a show that literally had, like... Oh, well, it's so great that we got all of these Kindle Paperweights from Amazon for our school. They are a super accessible and useful way for the students to learn. I love how much fun they are, too. And then, like, the entire plot of the episode was about someone stealing all of our Amazon Kindle Paperweights that we had got for the school.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's gross. And I did a little bit of digging while y'all were talking, and only one company has released any information about this rotation, and it's Netflix. Because it came up during their shareholder meeting, and Netflix was basically like, it's happening, but it's not really enough to bother us. It's kind of what happens to other services.
And that's actually a great point.
It's just like the profile sharing, right?
Yeah, I know some people who keep Netflix regardless, because it's something that they've been paying into for so long, but they'll do the rotation of other services, or because of profile sharing, they'll always have a Netflix account. So that's why I say, like, what metrics is actually what metric is actually important to people? Because I know this was about 2 years ago. WWE and their network, they had about 1.3 million subscribers to their network, 1.1 domestically in the States, and their whole thing was about number of minutes. And they actually extended pay-per-view from like 3 hours to like 4.5. WrestleMania became like a 5-hour ordeal because it was number of minutes that they were tracking, and that's how bonuses were actually given within WWE based on certain goals that they achieved on number of minutes spent on the WWE network.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I never really considered that aspect of it. Makes sense. I don't know. Like, is it good to make content like that just based off of contractual bonuses? Like, I'd rather a show be an hour long with killer content than watching 6 hours of drawn out content.
It's a really good question and point. I mean, this has always been at the heart of any creative industry is the tension between, in scare quotes, making good art, whatever that is, with making money. And, you know, when it's really good, we see stuff end out awesome. 80% of everything is garbage.
Yep.
Yeah, and I wonder how much the pandemic plays into that, too.
Well,
People
Netflix
having more time to watch, so that when it gets dragged out or drawn out, or it's quite questionable in its content to begin with, but it still gets greenlit because they need to have new shows. They need to churn the monster, right? Like, they need to feed the beast and just keep new stuff hitting. Like I say, my most annoying notification from Netflix on my phone is there are 708 new shows dropping this month. Like,
yeah.
Okay. Like, what the hell am I going to do with this much content? Like, the algorithm seems to be working, though. It's picking stuff. So, yeah. Pandemic life.
That pretty much is it. Anything else to add, guys, before we move on?
It's all weird.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Bill, this one's near and dear to your heart. Stadia.
Oh no.
What is going on with Stadia? So earlier this week, it was announced that Stadia Studios, or whatever it was called, the studio that was going to make first, for in-house games for Google, is shuttering. It's no more. This caused a bunch of articles, and I was even getting bombarded on our social medias, FYI, with, thanks for that, Phil, with people saying Stadia's dead, that's it for Stadia, Stadia's dead. People didn't even read the article, that it was the studio. So obviously Google kind of, in this announcement, to kind of calm their customers down a little bit, went on to say, we're doubling down our efforts on Stadia. Be a little tranquilo, we're very committed to this. But as we talked about on our previous show, who are their customers? Is it the end user, or is it other developers and studios?
Well, when you read the statement itself, it kind of tips its hat to the developers, because they mentioned it, I think, 4 times in the press release, that they're like, hey, well, we're going to make an environment that's really good for the developer, like the third-party companies, to basically access an audience. So you're right. There's a huge overreaction to it. All the people who wanted to say it's dead got to step up to the mic and say it's dead. I will say that it has given the fan base, from what I've seen and the pools that I am in, it's shaken everybody a little bit, because it's that inevitability that is Google, where they abandon projects, right? The Google graveyard is a thing. And it certainly looks like this is advancing that in a direction, if not happening now, then maybe later. But at the same rate, I was talking about this off mic with Tyler a little bit. It's a big investment that Google's made into the cloud gaming. And that, whether or not they close a AAA studio that never made anything or not, that overhead is still there, and they're just positioning it differently for their developers to put services on. That's generally what I think we've all figured out, that we're going to be looking at a situation where Ubisoft, with its Play service, might migrate over to that and use it as a backbone to, do the thing. And part of the deal, hopefully, will be, okay, if you're going to put all these games on it, we want to make those games available to our Stadia customers that are there. Because I just don't think that maybe the Cyberpunk thing helped it, maybe it hurt it. Because maybe they found out what the real player base is that's going to buy video games, and that's what's forcing this now. Because they're like, okay, Cyberpunk was our chance to really make this product viable. And then they look at the numbers and they go, even with all the good press, even though there was bad press, as we've talked about, but all the good press, because it works on Stadia, we still didn't see a high enough return. So therefore, we're going to have to start fragmenting our, backbone that we've created, and start licensing it out, or approaching different studios with getting their stuff onto our servers.
Yep.
So long story short, I don't think Stadia players that are out there have anything to worry about right now. Maybe down the road. And I think that it's just going to go to these, a lot of the resources going to go over to that. That's where they're going to be aiming their direction of the car, or the ship.
Yeah. I think you're right. And one thing that you mentioned that I really want to highlight is the whole thing that, they're providing this back end for other companies now. That's a service that they're going to be selling for other companies. And I think that part of the deal, as you've said, it's naturally, hey, if we're going to be doing this, it's going to be available to our customers. I can also see the infrastructure of Stadia being sold to Sony or Microsoft.
Yeah.
And, them just eating it up into either PS Now or Game Pass.
Yeah, and I did join a community group for the hashtag Team Stadia this week too, just where they made a statement basically saying, as fans, we're not going anywhere. We believe in this cloud idea, And I gotta say, like, it has warped my mind doing this experiment for the show with Cyberpunk and with the other titles that I purchased. I now go onto my Xbox and I look at, free games on Xbox Game Pass.
Mm-hmm.
But then I go, oh, fuck, I have to download that thing. Like, you know what I mean? And that cuts into my bandwidth, which means less, you know what I mean? Like, I think about the implications of what's doing what when now. So I'm like timing my downloads for the evening when I'm not playing Stadia or whatever. If I want to experiment with Dirt 4 or something like that, like, it really is influencing how I game. And I'm surprised by how much of an influence it is, because it's instant gratification. You pay your money, game's ready.
Yeah.
We're going to play.
Yeah.
And then the amount of free games, like I redeemed another like 6 titles last night for free with my Pro. I don't know. Some of them entered the Gungeon or whatever. I'm playing that and I'm like mildly enjoying it, which wouldn't be a game that I'd normally pick for me to play. Sure. Stuff like that. Like the accessibility of it makes me more open to trying things. Yep. Instead of committing and managing resources, managing downloads, managing updates, all that shit starts to get on me. And this is really it's even to the point where I looked up, I had to Google when Microsoft is going to be able to stream their service to a computer, when Game Pass is streamable. Because right now you can only stream it to a tablet or to a phone. And shortly, they said in the spring that basically they're going to do what Stadia is doing. They're going to stream it to any screen that you want. Like, you're going to be able to do it in a browser, that type of thing. So you're going to be able to go on, click on the tab and just say, I want to see what games are available to stream. It'll play them out. And then you can, if you have that title in your library, you can play it now.
That's what PS Now does.
So, yeah, it's great. It's great. So, if Stadia ends up not being the one, I hope it doesn't. I hope it sticks around. But other companies are coming at that market pretty hard.
It's the Wild West right now. Everyone is putting a lot of investment. Microsoft probably the most prolific investment in that space. But, people always forget that Sony has a foot in that water, in that pool as well. But so we'll see. Like, there's so much. This is it. Like, in my opinion, this is in some shape or way the future of gaming. I think that we're going to see for sure rise of cloud gaming. It won't be exclusive. There's always going to be that need and that want for the physical copy and physical systems, but I for sure see this as kind of the direction of these companies. And I wouldn't put it past Microsoft to drop a physical system to go this route.
Yeah, and it is the future. Look at Luna. Look at where all these things are. I think it was extremely hopeful of Google to think that they could make a AAA game in less than 5 years.
Yeah.
Like an exclusive AAA title. These things take years and sometimes decades for a project.
Yeah. It boggles my mind a little bit, the commitment towards making these AAA games, when if they were just able to crap out like a dozen Among Us or Mario Party minigame-esque games just for free on Stadia and have them be fun and just work instantly for multiplayer and you got on with a Stadia thing, I think that would have been a much better play, personally.
I agree.
Yeah, and like we got Journey to the Savage Planet Employee of the Month edition. That's a free game this month, a big free game.
Yeah,
which this month is it's pretty crappy this month. We've got the least amount of free games on Stadia this month. And but it's still a lot. We're still 4 or 5, right? And I'm playing that Journey to the Savage Planet, and it's good. I wouldn't have played it otherwise, right? I'm just like, holy shit! And it's not the type of game that's, I don't know. It doesn't look like it's incredibly difficult to develop that game, because it's basically just a lot of walking around and slow movement, right? It's a pretty basic foundation, just wrapped up in a really good story. Like we're saying, get good writers. And I don't know. I haven't finished it yet, but that's the kind of stuff that they should have been focusing in on Stadia more, right? Like, that's the type of content that you could probably bang it out in a year or two with a good bunch of devs and a solid story behind it. and make a name for yourself and see how the market reacts and make your decisions based off of that. But it always comes down to Google oversimplifying something or overcomplicating it and then realizing, holy shit, doing this is hard. And then they get the fuck out of there. Like VR is difficult. Let's stop.
Yeah.
It's just,
Well, and I think that they're starting to see that every time they keep doing that, it makes it harder and harder for them to do these other weird things.
Yeah.
mm-hmm. Well, even I think this week they announced that there's the Google Drive, right, that we all use. Everybody uses Google Drive in some capacity. But then they have a professional Google Drive. I forget what it's called. But they have some kind of business Google Drive. But then they are rolling it back to just be Google Drive now. It's just this whole frustrating experience as a customer. Because if you're an enterprise level, then you got to play in this sandbox with them. And then they roll it back to being all one thing because, well, it's too complicated otherwise. And this is exactly what they're doing with Stadia. This is exactly what they do with all their shit. Is they get something good, then they fuck it up, and then they try to roll it back.
Yep.
And then eventually they go, well, we don't even want to be there.
No.
And then, they cancel the project, and a lot of fans are left pissed off. But, you can only stay angry at Google for so long.
Well, they have my money now. So Angry Phil will show up on their phone lines because I am super patient on navigating those queues. And they're gonna hear if they shutter that and they take my money and they go, sorry, there's better be some recompensation somewhere in some form for Google for all these people who've spent money on these things.
Yeah, for sure.
It's going to be interesting. Like, and I'm not dooming it. Like I say, I'm still optimistic that the service will stick around. All right. So I'm just saying, like, on the flip side, if the reading between the lines is correct, then there's going to be hell to pay.
But yeah, honestly, I think people are just overreacting, and we're quick to declare Stadia dead. I don't think anyone actually reads articles anymore, just headlines.
I agree. I saw IGN last night. One of the videos, Inside Gaming, one of the videos where Brian gets on there and he just started totally tearing down Stadia. That it's like, then he reads the article and he's like, oh, maybe it's not as bad as we all thought. And I'm just like, God damn it. But your opening title credit is Stadia's dead.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's how you're getting the clicks. It's clickbaiting.
But I need my clicks.
And people want to hate
right?
on it so bad.
Yep.
People want to hate. Like, I was doing it before I tried the service. I'm just like, oh, Stadia doesn't work. It's full of shit. It's a crap service, blah, 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 blah. And I try it. And I'm like, oh, it works well for me.
Oh, this isn't that bad. Weird.
Yeah. Oh, this is the future. Now it's totally won me over the other way. But there's so much hate out in the community by reviewers, by tech people. It really is a large kaleidoscope of people throwing shade at Stadia all the freaking time.
Huh?
And it's galvanized the community where they're all really popular, or they're all really defensive and happy to one another because they realize that the boat is a shrinking boat. Like, there's only so many of us in there, so we have to support one another when we're talking about Stadia and spreading the love and keeping the hate out.
You make it sound like a cult.
Isn't it, though?
Oh, you know what? There's a lot of really good people in there. I gotta say, I haven't had.
That's how they get you in. That's how every cult starts. Look, there's a lot of really good people. They make some really good points. Next thing you know, Phil's like, guys, I've sold all my belongings.
I'm a Stadian now.
Stadia has invited us all out into a compound in upper state New York.
I'm gonna look at UFOs.
Oh, Lord.
Well, it reminds me of a little bit of the Jim Henson groups that I'm a part of. They're just generally positive, which is refreshing, instead of some groups, you get together and it's your hate for something that really motivates you, or your dislike of something.
That is the internet wrestling community in a nutshell. I don't know why half of these people still watch wrestling, because all they do is shit on it, left, right, and center.
Because they need to hate it. They need that.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough.
All right, guys.
That's true.
Let's move
all
on.
fake
So
anyway.
that's Stadia. Again, we'll be bringing you updates. We'll be talking about this. We'll be hopefully making a Stadia-centric episode soon. All right, Amazon. Earlier this week, it was announced, actually, while we were recording, that Jeff Bezos will transition from CEO to executive chair and pass the reins to Andy Jassy, who is a 24-year Amazon veteran. This is going to be happening later on this year. We had our quick takes on the last show, but we've had a little more time to research, to digest. Tyler, what's your gut saying about all this?
I mean, what my gut is saying is someone doesn't want to be stuck in a bunch of trials.
That's yeah.
My gut
Honestly.
is someone's like, oh, good times are ending. My time's worth more than that. Fuck y'all.
Yep.
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 That's exactly it. I think because apparently this week he reached out to Elon, or they've been talking a lot more because
Sure.
they want to match their space synergies more. So he wants to go into his space mode and try to catch rides with Elon and get his moon base set up and all this kind of stuff.
Wait. Are you saying that 2 billionaires are forming a cartel?
Maybe. But he wants to avoid the court.
Yeah, no shit. Jeez.
It really is, because you look at the, what was it, last round of congressional things that they had where you've got like the Google people, you've got Facebook, you've got Amazon, you've got Microsoft, all attending these video conferences. You could just see it on Jeff Bezos' face. I do not want to freaking be here.
Yeah.
Wait, and you know what? Fuck them. I don't give a shit if you want to be there. You should be there.
Yeah. Well, how many times has he made statements? He doesn't even know what he's doing anymore as CEO. It's like, we own Twitch? Really? You know what I mean? It's like, come on. He clocked out years ago as far as any semblance of that kind of control. He just cashing the checks.
I mean, I don't. Then if he's to me, if he's cashing the checks, that responsibility is all on him. That's how it works.
Oh yeah. There's no denying the responsibilities on him. It's whether or not he's acknowledging it himself is what I question. Like, he's in a different reality.
God, I hate.
How much money? I'm telling you, it's just crazy. But yeah, maybe it ends up. I don't know. Maybe Amazon gets better. We get to the moon. I don't know. I'm optimistic, hopeful. Not optimistic, but hopeful.
You're a bitter old
Something
man for
good will
certain
come
things
of
and optimistic about other things. I want to
With
do a brain scan on you because sometimes it's interesting.
No, I don't know. I see the space stuff and I get excited. I'm like a little kid. We need more space.
Have you
I did find it interesting watching the White House press briefing and they go, "What about Space Force?" And the lady laughed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not touching that one.
No.
What was I going to say? Oh, yeah. I don't know why on Friday night I was looking at Starlink, reading up on Starlink. Have you seen the prices for Starlink?
No,
but I saw an article on it last night. There's a lot of people signing up.
Yeah. Let me bring this up. I did take a screenshot while I was
Beep, beep, beep,
doing
beep,
this.
beep, beep, beep,
All
beep,
right. So
beep, 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 beep.
hardware for Starlink costs 650 Canadian. And this is like my area in Toronto. I didn't check if the prices change depending on where you are. So
I don't think it does. That's the pizza box that you need to mount on your roof.
Yeah. So the hardware is 650. Shipping and handling is 65. Taxes were 92. And then the services is 129 a month.
Yeah. But guess what? If you're in an area where you don't have any infrastructure for delivery, that looks pretty reasonable for the speed that you're going to get. Right?
Yes and
'Cause
no.
You're talking
it
about
does. So from a pure technology point of view, I have shitty internet. Like, let's take Tyler's parents, for example. You know,
Right.
they live in, I want to say, rural Manitoba. Shitty internet,
They're
right?
not anymore, but it used to be.
Yeah. Oftentimes they have to use satellite or something else to connect. So Starlink
Yeah, they're on satellite.
Yeah, Starlink is very, very appealing on surface, but $129 a month, $850 down to get the service up and running. When you're living in these rural areas, sometimes that's a pretty big investment. You know, that's a decision to be made. For us, you know, it's whatever. That's basically what we pay for internet now, right? Minus the hardware. So that's fine. But, you know, living in these rural areas, you know, oftentimes they don't make as much as people who live in cities and whatnot. So, you know, just throwing that out there, you know, that it is expensive, but from a pure technology point of view, it's brilliant. And it's why wouldn't you?
I got criticisms of the technology. So thing number one is you gotta remember that because these are satellites, you require certain orbital patterns.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the rural places in Canada are too far north for adequate satellite coverage to not be hard. With some critics pointing out that very quickly for many of these areas, around sunset, you will see more satellites in the air than stars to get the coverage Elon Musk is reporting.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
And secondly is Elon Musk has a history of some sketchy ass shit.
Well, yeah.
He hates unions. He wanted Pravda, like he wanted a media company where people would vote up and down the legitimacy of different news stories.
Yeah.
Which is insane. And I think that allowing a monopoly to form for the only way to get internet for a lot of these places is you're begging for more problems.
Yep.
There's competing services doing the same thing.
But they have to be meaningful
with their own satellites.
Yeah. But that's what I'm saying is they have to be meaningful.
It's happening. There is one other company doing it, and they have their stuff up. I forget the name of it. And Elon has gone on record saying he wishes that the $600 buy-in price was less.
I mean,
but he's like, the shit costs money. Like,
I mean, no, like, I don't trust Elon.
I know.
Right? He has made himself. Like, you just look at it from a journalist or a lawyer's point of view. If he's not a reputable witness, we have no reason to trust his representation.
Well, did you see what he did this week? He built a huge, like the world's biggest die-cast part, like fabrication. So like die-cast cars. He built it in the parking lot of his California factory. And it's too big to fit in the building, so they just built a roof over this thing. And it's an automated piece that takes what used to take 70 parts to make, and it die-casts it as one part for the cars. But like everybody's reacting to it going, that's a really bad idea because structurally die-casting this piece for your axle is going to result in breakage because 70 parts flex more than a die-cast part. And they're like, this is a bad idea. But all he wants to do is drive down the price of his production, right? So now we get to see potentially Tesla go into this zone because the guy doesn't want to learn from other people's mistakes. Because he's going to try and cut costs on production as much as he can.
Not production. Well, it is, but it's labor.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's all robots and everything like that, but it's also saving him assembly fees and all that stuff, right? So, I don't know. It's going to go one way or the other. It's either going to go really well or it's either going to go horribly wrong. So... It's fascinating to watch, and that did remind me seeing that story about what Tyler talks about with Elon Musk and the downside about being into these markets and being into this space and making the mistakes that he does, and all to save money, because that's ultimately, at the end of the day, what he's got to do.
Well, look,
Yeah.
most of his companies are only profitable because he skirts a lot of laws. And it's the same as Uber, right? Like, most of Uber's profitability was based around them not having to follow laws,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you don't have to have minimum wage requirements, you don't have to pay for car insurance because you've decided they're a contractor, despite the fact that legally there was not enough arm's length for there to be a contractor. Like, there's a bunch of problems with that. But Uber's money didn't come from better tech. It came from, we didn't listen to laws.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
Finding
Elon
the
Musk
loophole.
is in the same camp. And with how much he misrepresents things, and his history of doing stuff, like for one of the Teslas, like, all it is just it's different software than the more expensive version. You physically get the
Yep.
same thing, and they just paywall a bunch of your features.
Yep.
I would be very concerned if we don't have legislation in place preventing him of Elon Musk being like, "Oh, I got bad news. Turns out to get access to all these media companies, you got to pay extra for your internet because net neutrality doesn't exist anymore."
Mm-hmm. It's funny. I watch, as I've said on the show before, I watch Unbox Therapy and Lou later. And Lou bought a Porsche electric car, which doesn't have any automated driving features at all. It's just an electric car. All right. And he's got it parked in his studio because it's cold out and he doesn't want to bring it out there. But on this week, one of his Unbox Therapy shows, he went and he bought a Tesla. He actually went to the site and compared the experience of how he bought the Porsche, how few options you have. He bought a Plaid edition. So it's being delivered in March, and he's going to put the two cars head to head and then make his decision on which one he's going to keep. He's going to sell the other one or do something. So it was really interesting for me because we got to ride shotgun with a $200,000 purchase.
Mhm.
And the complications there within about what color is the paint. And you know what I mean? And I'm just like, this is mind-blowing that this exists and people are buying in the volumes that they're buying. And this is the experience. And and exactly that. He wants to get the super edition, but it's not out until later on the month. So Lou's just like, I'll just pay the extra $20,000 and get the software upgraded.
Yep.
To give me the extra 200 horsepower. It's already at 1,000 horsepower. Like 1,000 horsepower for a car.
Yep. That's where we're at, man.
It's just crazy. It, like, literally the website experience for $200,000 of your money is like 3 pages of just options. Like, oh, I'm going to choose this color. I'm going to choose this wheel. And I want this model for this horsepower. And then $200,000 later, see ya.
Yep.
That's scary to me. Like, that
I
is
agree.
terrifying.
So
But infrastructure.
we're reaching that time, the magic time that I try to keep the shows at. And we have one more subject. WandaVision. It was a good episode.
So good.
Episode 5.
So good. Such a
Remember,
good show.
the fact that we're trying to keep these spoiler free really limits us on what we can say and what we can say.
Yeah, God dang it. I
didn't think it was the best episode. I saw everybody freaking out Friday about how
You're-
I'm great. I didn't
you
think it was
watch
the
it?
best.
I'm sorry,
episode.
Phil. You're just wrong
You're
on this one.
You're fired.
Yeah.
No, I'm just in mid thought here. Then I went and I did a little bit of research on it, and I realized the implications.
Oh, you
that are
didn't
being
know.
presented.
It didn't click.
Yeah.
It didn't click.
There's certain things that didn't click with me on the first watch through. And I'm just like, the biggest thing that I could draw out of it was, hey, there's Sparky.
Yeah, my partner was like, "Hey, wait, that's
Yeah.
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 Like-
And who her father really is in the comics.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And the decisions that they're going to make in the show. I don't know if they're going to stick to that. So, but the door is wide open with how that all connects everything.
So, we're going to keep it at that. in the interest of keeping the spoiler free, in the interest of timing. But I do want to say that we will be bringing a full WandaVision review at the end of the season with special guests, Lisa and Brad from Comic Books Counseling.
So great. I'm looking forward to Lisa and Brad.
I am really excited about this show every week now. Like, it is a show that this past week we like it's the first thing we do Friday morning, which is like, it's been a long time since we're like, no, we can't wait till after work. We gotta watch this right now.
It is legitimately good. Like, I liked where it is now. That we're off the sitcom a little bit and we're getting that mix of what's going on. I do like that. It's made the show infinitely more appealing to me instead of all the guesswork that we had for the first 3 episodes.
Yeah. I knew it wasn't going to stick to that format the entire time, but the mix that we're seeing right now is so good, and the overall storytelling that they're giving us is just fantastic. Fan-fucking-tastic.
Yeah, and there's editing decisions that are getting made that are interesting too, because I noticed, like, on the back wall, when they had certain people identified in an area of New Jersey, that there was stuff written on it because people zoomed in, or stuff that happened this week that were posted last week's board. So it's interesting to think about how they're actually assembling these episodes too.
I also want to do a quick shout out to how much this show gains from directly grappling with how television is made in a very interesting way. Yes. There was a video essay a while ago that talked about how whether or not you liked Entourage, it had the net effect of it. It led to a lot of people better understanding how movies are made. Even if you didn't watch it, you'd it created this osmosis effect outwards because people understood that it more forced people to grapple with someone's making this editing decision, the kind of bullshit that you go to film school for. Yeah. Versus I think that WandaVision does a very similar thing of people are directly having to grapple with how a television show is made because they are making a television show inside of the television show. And it's really interesting that way.
Well, they really broke the fourth wall this week, so.
Yeah. Literally.
Yeah.
All right, so that's WandaVision, and I think that wraps up this episode in a neat little package. Phil, do your thing.
All right, everybody, if you're looking for us on the internet, you can find us at www.itscanonpodcast.com. You can track us down on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook at It's Canon Podcast. You can email us at show@itscanonpodcast.com. You can subscribe to us basically anywhere you find podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play. Anywhere you find them, we're going to be there. So please click the subscribe button so you can be notified whenever we release our kooky episodes. And make sure that you leave a rate and review, if at all possible, on your platform of choice. We appreciate it.
Yep. And I know I've been saying this for a few weeks, but we will be launching a contest shortly that everyone can be a part of.
I mean, at this point, it's now becoming a joke. Someday there'll be a contest. Someday.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you so much for tolerating, my lateness being upstairs and whatnot. But thanks so much, guys. This is the It's Canon Podcast, the podcast where we talk about all things, everything, all things pop culture, all things comics, all things movies, all things books, all things video games, all things toys, all things Lego, all things WandaVision, anything and everything. And guys, do you know what the best part of it all is?
I heard somebody tell me that it's all sort of in canon.
Nobody found the bodies. I mean, your thing. I got Boris that time.
I'm waiting for you.
Yeah.
We broke Boris.
You guys did. You got me. All right.
Let's get out of here.
He's Tyler. He's Phil. I'm Boris. The It's Canon Podcast. Goodbye.